This video will spoil up to episode 87 of the Attack on Titan anime and the new trailers. You guys remember during the first episode of Attack on Titan, Grisha leaves for the interior for an appointment and we never hear from him again until the end of season 3 part 2. We know that this appointment was him going to steal the founding titan from the Reese family, but why did he arbitrarily choose that day when Marley attacked? What if he never left on that day? What would have happened if Grisha was there to confront the Colossal and the Armored Titan? Well, this is a very deep series of questions because they would alter the course of the story in massive ways. Let's get started. Let's say that Grisha is at the inner gate about to leave Shiganshina, but there's something wrong with his paperwork and he's experiencing a delay. During this time, Bertolt just happens to transform while Grisha is away from his house. Just like everybody else, Grisha would be very shocked, but for an entirely different reason. Seeing the Colossal Titan peek over the wall, Grisha would realize that Marley is finally starting their assault on Paradis and he would shit himself. But at the same time, he would snap back to the present and spring into action. Grisha's first priority would be to protect his family. Seeing as how Eren and Mikasa were able to run back to the house in a few seconds, Grisha on foot would take a lot longer to get back to the house. During this time, what we see in episode 1 would play out. For dramatic effect, we say that Grisha arrives as soon as Carla gets eaten. I think something just clicked in everybody's head as they're listening, because Grisha knows what Dinah's Titan looks like. He saw her get transformed and it's arguably one of the most traumatic things in his life. So I think it's pretty safe to assume he hasn't forgotten despite the time that's passed. So as you can imagine, watching your ex-wife eat your current wife would be extremely traumatic for Grisha. But even then, I don't think he would transform. His first priority would be to make sure that Mikasa and especially Eren are safe. Grisha did have a boat to catch to his appointment, so he would get the kids onto the boat for safety. This is where it gets interesting though, because this is when the Armored Titan shows up. We'll assume that Grisha is at the inner gate and he sees the Armored Titan come around the corner like it does in the anime. He tells Hannes to take the kids and run. This is where it gets interesting. Grisha, being a restorationist, knows what the Armored Titan is capable of doing. This is the first time he would be forced to transform because he knows that if he doesn't, the entirety of Wall Maria will be taken down. Bear in mind that at this stage, Grisha has only transformed once to our knowledge, and this was when he first got the attack titan from Kruger and came to Shiganshina. On the other hand, Reiner has been on the operation to take out an entire country with the help of the warrior unit. So this is where the first contentious question of the video comes. Could Grisha beat Reiner in a fight? Just to lay it out, both the attack titan and the armored titan are 15 meters tall. At this point, Reiner has a bit more battle experience with the armored titan, but an interesting thing to note is that none of this experience so far is titan on titan combat. You could say that he and Annie and the other warriors would spar in Titan form, but that's kinda headcanony, so I'm not gonna use that. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I think that Grisha could beat Reiner in a one-on-one fight. Let's go through a play-by-play of how I think the fight would play out. Grisha, still in human form, sees the armored titan come around the corner and get ready to charge at the gate, and he transforms into his titan form. Reiner, pretty understandably, would be really confused and caught off guard, which Grisha would capitalize on and land the first blow. From this point on, it would be more of a boxing match rather than the MMA fight that Eren and Reiner had in season 2. Like we saw in the Grisha vs Frida fight, which was more of just a fucking attack on Frida, Grisha doesn't really have a fighting style and rather relies on brute force. On the other hand, Reiner has proper Marleyan military training, so despite Grisha landing the first hit on Reiner, his advanced military training will let him stabilize and start pressing Grisha. But this is where I think Grisha will start to turn it around. We all know that Titan shifters can access the memories of past users, but the attack titan has the ability to look into the memories of its future users too. Grisha can use this power, or more accurately, Eren would send him the memory of him fighting Reiner to start hardening his strikes and start dealing serious damage to the armored titan. The way Grisha is built shows that he's gonna have a lot more punching power than Eren or Kruger because of how long his arms are. This is a personal theory of mine, I don't know how much of this is true, but I believe that Zeke and Grisha's titans are built really similar because of the fact that they're father and son. They both share the same long arm, thick torso, short legs kind of build. And since we've seen Reiner get beaten by Zeke in the past in Titan vs Titan combat, I feel like it isn't too much of a stretch to say that an extremely angry Grisha who just saw his wife eat his wife and with Eren's memory and the element of surprise on his side would be able to take out Reiner in a 1v1. The only downside with this parallel is that Zeke is 17 meters tall, whereas Grisha and Reiner are 15 meters tall, which I think is a buff that Zeke gets because of his royal blood, but the logic behind it still carries over. So now that Grisha has mid to high diffed Reiner, we encounter another problem. Annie would realize that the inner gate hasn't come down yet and would go to check it out. We know that Annie was there at the fall of Shiganshina Shiganshina because the late Commander Erwin stated that she was the one that called the hordes of Titans that invaded the district. Grisha, already fatigued and damaged from his fight with Rhina, would have to fight her back to back. Now, we've seen Eren create multiple Titan bodies in a short span of time and fight the Warhammer, the Jaw, and the Armor Titan back to back to back. So it's clear that the Attack Titan has the capabilities to throw some serious hands. Even though this is more credit to Eren Yeager than it is to the power of the Attack Titan, Eren can send memories of the fight in Liberio back to Grisha and let him know that he's capable of pulling off crazy shit like that. This, paired with the fact that Grisha is extremely fucking angry at this point, he would have no trouble mustering up the strength and mental fortitude for another Titan body. So Grisha would refresh his Titan body and would be ready to fight against Annie. The thing about Annie is that everything that Grisha had going for him against Rhina doesn't apply to her. The element of surprise isn't there anymore because Annie would see Rhina lying on the ground beat to shit and another Titan standing over him and would sum up the situation pretty easily. This is because the location of the Attack Titan is unknown to Marley, and seeing that a Titan that clearly isn't the founder or one of the other 9, through the process of elimination, Annie would realize that she's fighting against the Attack Titan. And also, compared to Rhina, Annie is a much more skilled one-on-one combatant. So would Grisha be able to beat Annie? Once again, the Attack Titan's power to transcend time comes in clutch for Grisha. Eren has beaten Annie once before in Stohess, and has experienced fighting her before that during training and the 57th expedition. So while Grisha might be getting pressed during the initial stages of the fight, in the latter half of the fight, he would access Eren's memories in a time of need, just like Eren did with the cannonball situation, and turn the fight on Annie and beat her too. After Annie's done, even Grisha would be at his physical limit, which no amount of rage can overcome, and would diss the Titan body and get back to the evacuation boat. Just like in Tross, the soldiers would be too panicked to think too deeply about what they just saw and would just chalk Grisha up as another abnormal and would focus on evacuating more civilians. That being said, I think the warriors would still manage to break down the inner wall, as after losing to Grisha, they would just have to take a little bit of time to recuperate, and Rhina would transform again and charge through the gate. Or Bertolt could come through the gate, transform and kick down the inner gate too. Grisha would still go to the interior to take the Founding Titan and give it to Eren because he's about to die from the curse of Ymir. And then the rest of the story plays out in similar ways, but there are key differences. Now, I want to talk about a slightly different hypothetical that would change the story in a much more drastic way. What if Grisha managed to save his wife, Karla Yeager? What if it's the same hypothetical as the one I just talked about, but he gets there sooner than expected and sees Dinah walking towards the house? In this scenario, Grisha would see Karla trapped under the rubble and would immediately transform. I don't think that Grisha would be able to kill Dinah out of a kind of mental block or trauma, but he would definitely buy enough time for Hannes to help Karla out of the rubble and get her and Eren and Mikasa to safety. Or more likely, Grisha could incapacitate Dinah and dig Karla out of the rubble himself. We know that pure Titans have little to no hand-to-hand combat skills, so this could be a relatively easy task for Grisha. The rest of the hypothetical would still play out in the same way with Rhina and Annie in the wall coming down, but now this is where the major deviations start to come in. Karla is still alive, which means that Eren didn't watch her die. There are a lot of implications to this, but I want to go through in chronological order so I'm not jumping around the timeline like a maniac. The most immediate result is that Eren would lose one of his major character motivations and a large part of his drive to join the Scouts. He would still join, but his motivation would be a lot less ironclad. Rather than doing it to avenge his mother and kill all the Titans, he'd do it just so he can see the outside world with Armin. At this point, Eren, Mikasa, Armin, Hannes, and Karla all would have seen Grisha transform into a Titan. And as you'd expect, they would all have a lot of questions. But what I think would happen is that as soon as they evacuate, Grisha would immediately go to the interior and get the Founding Titan. It's for the same reasons why he did it before. Because regardless of the fact that Karla's alive, he's still a restorationist and he wants to save as many Eldian lives as possible. After taking the Founder, he would come back to Wall Rose, find Eren, and give him the Founder as per normal. He would do this before any official questioning would happen. At most, Hannes and Karla would be like, what the fuck just happened? But the kids would be too traumatized and in shock to really process what they saw. Hannes, however, would make a report about Grisha transforming, and this would immediately set alarms off in the interior. The upper echelon of the government who know about the Reese family and the Titans would connect the dots that the catastrophe at the Reese chapel, paired with the fact that a Titan shifter appeared in Shiganshina, was actually Grisha, who later stole the Founding Titan. They would try to track down the Yeager family and question them about what they saw. And them being just as oblivious, they wouldn't be able to give the MPs any solid answers. The worst case scenario, the Yeager family gets killed like Armin's parents or Historia's mother. But the most likely case is that they get left alone because they don't know anything and probably get given a hush order. Similarly to what they did with Krista, they would probably force Mikasa, Armin, and Eren to join the military to keep their secret from getting out. The MPs would probably direct all their efforts in trying to find Grisha, not knowing that Eren already ate him. Then the events of season 1 would play out up until the Trost recovery mission where Eren plugs the hole in the wall. After the hole's been plugged, Eren's existence will become more widespread, and more importantly, the MPs will figure out that that he's the one that has the founding titan. If you remember, this doesn't happen until the start of season 3 part 1 in the main story, so it kind of accelerates the story a little bit. While Eren is being hunted by the MP, I think Erwin and Levi would see the value that Eren could bring to the scouts, especially with the basement key, and would harbor and hide him like they did during the start of season 3 part 1. The 57th expedition beyond the walls wouldn't take place because all scout activity beyond the walls would have been halted by the MPs to make sure Eren doesn't get eaten by a titan. So we would skip the second half of season 1 and go straight to the start of season 2. Eren doesn't really play a major part in the first half of season 2, so it would remain the same. The whole Castle Utgard arc would happen. Now, this is where another major deviation from the plot would come. Eren would fight Reiner under the wall, but because he has access to Grisha's memories now, he knows how to beat Reiner in a fight. But would he actually beat him is the real question. The fight would be a lot more in Eren's favor this time than it was in the actual show, because he would go into the fight knowing he could harden his strikes like Grisha would have done. This would result in the fight being very Eren-sided, and he wouldn't even need to start grappling with Reiner. This makes it harder for 1. Reiner to exploit his main strength as the armor titan, and 2. Get Eren in position for Bertolt to drop on him like he did in the anime. What I think this will result in is forcing Bertolt to complete a complete transformation rather than a partial one, and funnily enough, it would be the scenario straight out of the opening. And needless to say, Eren, without access to the powers of the founder, would get his shit packed up by Bertolt and get kidnapped just as normal. So we move along the timeline to the confrontation at the end of season 2. This leads us to another question. Would Eren recognize Dinah's titan? Because remember, in this timeline, Karla didn't get eaten, so at this point it's just any other titan to Eren. Because Karla didn't die, Hannes wouldn't feel obligated to rush in and try and redeem himself. Regardless though, Eren is still on the ground bleeding, and Dinah would try to pick him up to eat him and let Eren access the powers of the founder for the first time. Season 3, both part 1 and 2 would remain pretty much unchanged the whole way through. The government still wants to kidnap Eren, and Levi and the scouts would try to stop it from happening. The coup would still happen. The whole thing with Rod Reis and Eren learning the truth behind what his father did to the Reis family would still stay the same, and would recontextualize Grisha's actions in Eren's mind, just like it did in the main show. But then we move on to season 4, and we need to realize that Eren's attitude would stay pretty much the same regardless of Grisha leaving or not, because of what he saw when he touched hands with Historia at the end of season 3 part 2. Now, this is the most important part of this video. Would Eren start the rumbling if he never saw Karla die? Because the show goes very far out of its way to show that Karla's death is one of Eren's prime motivators. Eren very much doesn't want to kill billions of innocent people, but feels like he has to be able to protect his friends on Paradis. I feel that one thing that's very misunderstood about Eren Yeager's character is that he is the way he is because of the brutal murder of Karla Yeager. I strongly believe that this isn't the case. Eren has always been this way, very passionate and, dare I say, an extremist, which we can see from episode 1. He raves about freedom and wanting to go outside the wall as if it's the last thing he will ever do, even before Karla's death. This is the very reason why Grisha chose to give him the attack titan anyway. If it was based solely on physical ability, he would have given it to Mikasa instead. Eren has gone as far as to kill another human being at a very young age who he thought was less than an animal because he would prey on others, which goes against Eren's worldviews. Karla's death just served as a catalyst to Eren's actions, but he would still do the same things even if Karla didn't die. Just imagine Eren finding out at the end of season 3 part 2 that the rest of the world hates the island Eldians and wants them eradicated. The fact that Karla was murdered by these same people is significant, but it's not even close to being the prime and sole motivator behind Eren's rage at the outside world. He hates the outside world because he believes they're the one who are robbing him of his freedom, and that they want to bring harm to his close friends and family. So yes, I believe that if Grisha never left and managed to save Karla Yeager, Eren would still start the rumbling. However, this begs the question though, would Eren even care if Karla was mad at him for starting the rumbling? Eren, after he starts the rumbling, has pretty much accepted the fact that what he's doing is wrong, but it's the only way to ensure the safety of his friends and family. He would hate himself a million times more if he was alienating Karla alongside everybody else. But the memories of Grisha's sister, Dinah, and the desire to protect his family would still outweigh the self-hatred that this would bring. And there you have it. I tried not to take the story too far off the rails and just start writing random shit that I think would happen. I wanted to keep things in the same relative scope as the story and see how differently certain events would play out. Like for example, there's no way to know what would happen if Grisha lost to Reiner and got taken back to Marley. Like, oh yeah, the Marleyan military would give the attack titan to another warrior and then come back for the founder. Like that's true, but that is not even the same show at that point. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, like and subscribe. By the time the next video comes out, I should be able to start talking about the special in the videos without having to worry about spoilers, which is pretty nice. Let me know what you think would change if Grisha never left, and let me know any other fun Attack on Titan hypotheticals you want me to talk about. I also started streaming on Twitch. I stream every day or every second day, so come watch. I play games and talk about anime most of the time. Share this video with your friends, and thank you so much for watching. See ya!